What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we're starting our journey through the Druid subclasses with the Circle of the Blighted Druid, written by Matt Mercer of Critical Role, and this embraces the land that is already too far gone, whether by magical means or sometimes non-magical, but you embrace it anyway and it becomes a part of you. It gets a little creepy, but is it powerful? That's what we're going to find out today. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch this channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to get to our goal of 2,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but I need your help to get there, of course. And share the video with your friends, and of course, click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. So like I was saying, the Circle of the Blighted Druid is one that embraces the land that has been taken over by some kind of usually dark magic that has caused the land to suffer in some way. And this manifests in several of our features here, and it causes a very dark and gritty druid, which is interesting because we really don't have something like that, at least something like that that's built into the Druid kit. Of course, you can always flavor things how you want, but this is built into the flavor. So I appreciate that. I think that's really cool. Is it powerful? Let's find out. So when we pick up this subclass at level 2, we get a couple of features, and the first is Defile Ground. So if we weren't upset about the land we come from being defiled enough, well, we can kind of spread that around, and it's kind of interesting how this works. So as a bonus action on our turn, we can choose to corrupt a patch of land that is 10 foot in radius, and it can be within 60 feet of us for 1 minute. It's considered difficult terrain, and whenever a creature that is within that circle takes damage from an attack or spell, that wording there is very important, we'll come back to that later, it takes an extra 1d4 necrotic damage, which is pretty cool. And of course, this can be moved up to 30 feet as a bonus action, and it of course does not affect creatures that are in the air. And this actually gets bigger once we get to level 10, up to a 20-foot radius, and the extra damage also goes up to a 1d6 at that point and 1d8 at 14th level, and we can use this once per rest. So this is a feature that reminds me a lot of something like Hex or Hunter's Mark, except for the fact that technically it's a little bit better. The reason I say that is because, number one, everyone can benefit from this damage. It is once per turn. It doesn't say your turn, just anyone's turn. So this helps everyone. You can move it and for 30 feet as your bonus action. There's no concentration, and it's fantastic. It's necrotic damage, so of course you're going to run into some creatures that are immune or resistant to this. It happens, but I mean, it could be a lot worse. It could be poison damage. If it was poison damage, then this would really be bad. But I mean, it scales decently. It's an extra, I mean, think about it. At 14th level, it's a D8 per creature that goes up and hits it on a turn, which, I mean, that's going to be pretty good as far as over the course of a minute. You can't drop concentration on it. So the only time that you're going to have a problem with it is if you can't catch up with something that has moved more than 30 feet. I think that's pretty great. I think it's really nice, just extra damage all the time. You can create a pretty decent sized patch of difficult terrain as well, so it's going to make it harder and harder for creatures to get away from it. I think that's great. Honestly, this is a 9 out of 10 feature for me. There's just so much built into this that's just really nice that just makes this a better version of Hunter's Mark, honestly. And I really like it. I think it's definitely worth using. Also at level 2, we get Blighted Shape, and this changes your appearance to a very creepy form that you can choose. Typically, it's going to be nature related, but it will mess with your appearance in some way, which I think is really flavorful. And you actually pick up intimidation proficiency because you look so freaky. That's cool, right? That's pretty neat. Just free proficiency. I'm always going to take that. But in addition to that, you pick up a +2 to AC whenever you are in wild shape, and you get dark vision up to 60 feet while in wild shape. And if the creature that you're turning into already has dark vision, you add an additional 60 feet to that range. This is pretty awesome, right? When we talked about our wild shape feature in last week's video, I'll put a link to it up in the icon above. We talked about ACs being kind of low on a lot of these beasts. You know, once we get to level 8 and we got CR1, our best option usually, at least on the ground, is going to be a dire wolf, and that has an AC of 14. This raises that to a 16, which really isn't that bad, honestly. I think that's really fantastic. You're running a regular wolf now, which is a little bit lower, but I mean, still, at level 2, being able to buff the AC against a bunch of creatures that don't have a huge bonus to hit, that's going to be kind of huge, and it's just going to make your wild shape that much more durable. And that's the whole thing, right? We're here to create extra hit points that we didn't have access to before. And this makes it easier to keep them. Obviously, it doesn't help you with saving throws and everything, but still, that's nice. And it makes you better at scouting because you have better dark vision, or just dark vision with a creature that may have not had it before, or it's even better now. That's a 10 out of 10 improvement. I love that. Yes, there are others that make wild shape better in other ways, but I mean, if we're going to keep our base wild shape feature, this is a really effective way to boost it, and it's actually going to get boosted even more later as we go. So this is really, really cool. We're looking pretty good here at level 2. At level 6, we get Call of the Shadow Seeds, and this is where things get really freaky. So whenever something is within your defile ground area, you can actually use your reaction to summon a little sapling that comes up, and you can pretty much choose how you want it to look within 5 feet of that creature. And then you can direct it to make an attack against that creature, and then it follows your commands on following turns on your initiative score. It will continue to listen to you until it drops to 0 HP, or until you finish a long rest, or until you summon another one. So you cannot have more than one at once, unfortunately. It is what it is. But you can use this a number of times per day, equal to your proficiency bonus. And here is the stat block here. So it does scale with your proficiency bonus. It does go up with you. Its hit points go up with your druid level, which is interesting, and I think I like that. It makes you want to take more and more levels of druid to make this a little bit bulkier. But there may also be a time where you don't want it to have a ton of HP, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. But I mean, AC is 10 plus proficiency bonus, so 13 right now. That's not too bad. And then it, of course, will go up to eventually a 16. Not terrible. At level 20, it'll have 40 hit points, so it's not super tanky. I mean, it may take one or two hits, maybe, just depending. 30-foot speed, it's all right. The big thing here, what I consider it is close to, is a Twig Blight, and it's actually better than the Twig Blight in pretty much every single way, especially the fact that it gets multi-attack, although I hate that it's not until level 14, and I'll just be honest, I really don't think we're going to be using this feature after level like 10 or so, at least on a build that I have in mind. So it's okay, right? It's nice from level 6 to 10 in my opinion, but at level 10 I feel like it kind of runs out of steam, unfortunately. So it is what it is. But as far as having a summon here, it's really nice to be able to do it on a reaction. That is huge because it really helps you to not gum up your action economy in your summons, right? As far as looking at things like the Shepherd Druid that focuses on summons, you're looking at your action most of the time. And yes, you can buff those summons, but also this just does it on a reaction. And you can do it proficiency bonus times per day. So 3 for now. And then later on, you know, you can do 6 of these and you can just go back to back as each of them dies, right? So I think there's value in that as well. So overall, I think this is an 8 out of 10 feature. I think that its scaling runs out, and honestly it's because it has a feature later in the subclass that honestly kills this feature, which is unfortunate, but I think that another feature we get actually makes this obsolete later on. So it is what it is, but let's go ahead and actually move on to said feature. At level 10, we get Foul Conjuration, and this actually buffs our summons. And so you would be thinking, well, then why is it that you just said that the Blighted Sapling is no longer useful here? Well, because it goes beyond that. It is any beast, fey, or plant that we summon or create by spells or class features. This is kind of huge, right? Because we get several spells that are conjure, that are summon, that are whatever it happens to be, and we get to buff them in a couple of ways. Number 1, they have immunity to necrotic and poison damage, as well as the poison condition. That's pretty great, right? Poison is a very commonly resisted type of damage, and actually a lot of things are immune to it, so getting immunity there is nice. Necrotic is probably going to be more useful at this level, being 10th level, so you'll probably run into some necrotic damage, and you'll just shake it off, which is pretty awesome. Even more so, what I'm looking at here is Toxic Demise. Whenever a creature hits 0 hit points, it actually explodes in a 5-foot radius, and it forces a Constitution saving throw against whoever is there. They take necrotic damage equal to the challenge rating of the creature that just exploded. And it's based on this table here, so if it's 1/4 or lower, it takes 1d4. If it's 1/2, it does 1d6. 1 or higher, a number of d8s equal to the creature's challenge rating, or if there is no challenge rating, it's a number of d6s equal to your proficiency bonus. So here's the thing, right? The sapling has no challenge rating, so it would be a number of d6s equal to our proficiency bonus, so eventually that's going to be 6d6 damage whenever this dies and blows up. Not too bad, right? However, there is another spell that I'm thinking of here. I'm not thinking about the ones that are the summon spell, where I summon a big creature, I say big in quotations, big creature, one creature to come and do a bunch of damage and then have that one final hurrah as it dies. That is not what I'm thinking of here. I'm thinking of Conjure Animals, and Conjure Animals is going to make this feature quite dangerous. Now, I said earlier in the Defile Ground feature how the wording was very specific. The way that I word this, you would not get the bonus to damage from Defile Ground on the explosion of one of these creatures. So just be careful with that. Ask your DM. I rule it personally that it does not stack. But that does not say that you could not just fireball everything and then get the bonus anyway. But here's kind of how I see it. Cast Conjure Animals and then have all of your animals attack that creature and then stay surrounding it, right? Depending on the size of the creature, you may need to upcast Conjure Animals in order to fill enough squares around it, but make it to where the creature can't leave. That's the whole thing here, is make sure that the creature cannot get out of there except for by teleportation. And then you can do a few things. Number one, if it's small enough of an area, you could have your friend fireball everything and then explode. And that could be really dangerous, right? With Conjure Animals, your little summons are not going to be very strong. So they're gonna die, and then they're gonna explode. And when one explodes, they're gonna knock the others out. So the other thing is, say your fighter is coming next, your fighter could just fire an arrow at this and cause a chain reaction by hitting one of them, and then they all explode in turn. This could get dangerous. Now, the thing is, it's con save. Con saves are really strong, especially on monsters, so a lot of times they're probably going to succeed on this save. So it would also be nice to have a friend who can cast Bane. That would help out a lot. But, you know, outside of things like Contagion, which are incredibly unreliable, it's really hard to dampen Constitution saving throws in D&D. I was looking for an effective way through multiclassing or through a friend, and it's really hard to do that. We do get Contagion, but they have to fail 3 saves, and I do not consider that reliable at all. So unfortunately, I don't think that's a great way of doing it, but I still think this can add up a lot, right? Even if you have 8 creatures, that's 8 con saves that something is having to make. Surely you're going to fail a few of them, and especially if you're in a fireball, that's just making the fireball do that much more damage, which is fantastic, of course. I think this is really cool, but at the same time, it makes our previous feature of Call of the Shadow Seeds obsolete. The only real advantage is that it doesn't take a spell slot to do that, but I mean, still, I would much rather Conjure Animals, have them all charge up, do their damage, and then blow up and just deal a bunch more damage. And I feel like that's a really effective use of our time, and then we can concentrate on something else, right? I think that's pretty cool. Overall, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10 just because con saves are tough and it's really hard to give disadvantage on them reliably. So it's going to be really difficult to do the full damage every time, but it's still going to be pretty reliable. And I really, really like the whole idea of this feature. Finally, at level 14, we get Incarnation of Corruption, and this gives us a couple of new features here. Number one, we just get a flat +2 to AC, regardless of form. So this does stack with our Wild Shape. So now in Wild Shape, we have a +4 to AC. So we now have an 18 AC as a Dire Wolf. That's pretty good, right? We have 37 hit points and an 18 AC. That's not bad, really. I mean, that's really not bad at all. And if that wasn't enough to help out with your ability to just withstand hits, whenever you step into your Defile Ground feature, you can use a bonus action to actually gain temp HP equal to your proficiency bonus. That's pretty good too, right? Every turn, you can just re-up that as long as you're within this 20-foot circle, which is pretty forgiving, to be honest. I think that's pretty fantastic. Overall, 9 out of 10. I think it's really strong, right? +2 AC is great because Druids can't wear metal armor, so typically you're not going to have any kind of heavy armor unless you have like found like a purple worm or had like some really strong dragon scale armor made or something like that. You'd have to talk to your DM about it, but I would say by and large Druids are not wearing crazy kinds of armor, and when you're in Wild Shape, your armor really doesn't make a difference unless you're like a horse and somebody put armor on you. In which case that's a little different, and this could stack with that as well, which could get kind of insane too. But overall, I think this is pretty great. I think it makes you that much more tanky, and Druids, that's one thing that Druids struggle with, is having a low AC most of the time. So I think that's why this is going to score really well. So what does that leave us with as a final ranking? I think this is a pretty cool subclass. Honestly, I think it's a lot of fun. Is it fantastic? No, I don't think that it's anything like the best Druid subclass. I don't think it's the worst Druid subclass either. I think it's just kind of middle of the road, to be honest. I think it's good. It definitely adds some really reliable ways of dealing extra damage. It helps your friends, especially with the Defile Ground, being able to just deal extra damage every single turn. That's pretty valuable, right? I think that's really great. It doesn't require concentration, so there's no stepping on toes of all of your amazing concentration spells that you get as a Druid, especially your conjuring spells, which come into play a little bit later. Having a +2 AC when you are in Wild Shape, yes, it's no combat Wild Shape, but I mean, if you're gonna stick with the regular Wild Shape rules, this is a really nice way to buff it. And plus, it gives you so much flavor with your ability to change shape and everything like that. I love that. Your little seed guys that can go in. It's just a better Twig Blight, and if nothing else, it's an extra body on the field to just be annoying to your enemies. And I mean, that's worth it a lot of the time, to be honest. And then of course, blowing up everybody. That's fantastic. I love that. And then just a flat +2 to AC. What's wrong with that? I love that. I think it's really great. Overall, I think this is an 8 out of 10. It's not the best, but it's definitely far from the worst. And so I think it's definitely usable. I think it's going to be super fun to use, and I cannot wait to build one for you later this week. So make sure that you like the video and subscribe so you don't miss that video. And then of course, next week we're getting on to actually rules as written ones, starting with the Dreams Druid. So of course, if you're not so into homebrew, then that will be there for you as well. As far as later this week, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.